I always thought I knew my family. The laughter around the dinner table, the holidays spent wrapped in warmth, the endless I love yous. That seemed to float through our house like sunlight. Everything felt perfect, or at least that's what I told myself. I was the middle child, the quiet one, the observer. My sister Chloe was the golden child, beautiful, charming, effortlessly adored. My parents always said I was sensible, level-headed, and responsible, but somehow in the theater of our family, I was always cast as a supporting character, never the star. That illusion shattered one rainy Thursday morning. I was going through some old documents in the study, a place I rarely entered, except when searching for something I thought I'd misplaced, and I found it. A receipt for Chloe's wedding. Not just any receipt, but the final bill, a staggering $38,000 statement from the wedding planner, caterer, and venue combined. My parents' names were listed as payers, which wasn't unusual, but then I saw it. My signature, forged. I stared at it for what felt like hours. My hands trembled. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst from my chest. The very people who were supposed to protect me, nurture me, and love me, unconditionally had, without a shred of guilt, used my name to pay for my sister's extravagant wedding. $38,000, my name, forged. I felt every emotion at once: anger, disbelief, betrayal, shame. My parents, the people I had trusted blindly, had weaponized my identity to finance Chloe's fantasy wedding. And the worst part, Chloe didn't even know. She had been blissfully unaware, smiling in her white dress, thinking her life was perfect, while my parents quietly stole from me. I wanted to confront them immediately. I wanted to scream, to cry, to demand justice, but something inside me, a mix of pride, shock, and disbelief, told me to pause. I needed to understand the full extent of what they had done before I exposed them. I needed proof, evidence, and most importantly, I needed control. For the next few days, I watched them carefully. The small gestures, the careless mentions of money, the subtle way they justified every indulgence. They left clues without even realizing it. My father bragged about how generous they were being with Chloe's wedding, never mentioning the thousands taken from my account. My mother hummed happily about the perfect flowers, the dream venue, the once-in-a-lifetime dress, completely oblivious that their generosity was built on deception. I began collecting evidence in secret: bank statements, receipts, emails from the wedding planner, all meticulously organized in a folder I named The Truth. Every tiny detail of their deception became a weapon in my hands, a way to balance the scales of justice. I told no one, not Chloe, not friends, not distant relatives. If they knew, it would ruin everything. The betrayal had to be mine alone to carry, mine alone to transform into action. At night, I lay awake replaying the moment I discovered the forgery. My mind wandered to fantasies of confrontation, of humiliation, of exposing them in a way that would leave them speechless. But I tempered my rage with patience. Revenge, I realized, was an art, not a tantrum, and I intended to execute it with precision. The house continued its facade of perfection: laughter, dinners, smiles. My parents were blissfully unaware that the quiet observer had transformed into a storm. Every polite conversation, every casual smile, was now charged with electricity. They didn't know that I knew. And that ignorance was my advantage. I wasn't just hurt, I was awake. I saw them clearly for the first time: greedy, selfish, careless. And yet, I also realized the truth about myself. I was stronger than I'd ever believed. I had a plan forming in the recesses of my mind, a plan that would ensure that one day they would regret underestimating me. Not just for the money, not just for the betrayal, but for thinking they could manipulate me and get away with it. And so, with the forged signature staring back at me from the paper, I made a silent vow. I would make them regret it. Every smile, every holiday, every bit of trust they took for granted, I would reclaim it, piece by piece, until the illusion of their perfection crumbled entirely. After discovering forgery, I could no longer see my parents the same way. The warmth of our home felt artificial, the smiles hollow, and every conversation now carried a subtle sting. I had once believed in the sanctuary of family, but that illusion was shattered, replaced by a quiet, simmering vigilance. Every word, every gesture, every casual laugh was now a potential clue to their arrogance, greed, and blind favoritism. I began watching them, not in a paranoid way, not yet, but with careful attention. At first it was subtle, noticing the receipts left carelessly on the kitchen counter, the whispered phone calls my father made to the wedding planner, the way my mother kept a small stack of envelopes hidden in the drawer. Everything suddenly spoke volumes. They were meticulous in appearance but careless with detail. Their hubris was my greatest ally. I also watched Chloe, oblivious as ever. She floated through life like a sunbeam, her wedding now a memory captured in glossy photos and social media posts. She was blissfully unaware that my parents had used my name to fund her fantasy. And as much as part of me ached at the thought of her unwitting involvement, I also realized this ignorance gave me leverage. My revenge would not be petty, it would be precise. Gathering proof became my obsession. I traced the bank statements, noting every transaction that linked my account to the wedding vendors. I collected emails between my parents and the wedding planner. I even discreetly recorded conversations where they bragged about how generous we were being with Chloe. Each piece of evidence was a thread, weaving together a tapestry of betrayal that my parents had assumed would never be seen. But I didn't act immediately. Patience was part of the strategy. Revenge wasn't about acting in the heat of anger. It was about control, precision, and timing. Every interaction became an opportunity to observe, to understand their weaknesses, to identify the cracks in their perfect facade. I noticed how my mother's ego craved admiration, how my father's pride made him blind to scrutiny, and how Chloe's innocence made her unwittingly complicit. I cataloged these traits mentally, knowing they would all become tools in my plan. At the same time, I grappled with my emotions. Betrayal isn't just anger. It's heartbreak, confusion, and a deep sense of loss. I mourn the parents I thought I had, the trust I had invested blindly. I felt the sting of invisibility, the quiet pain of always being the responsible one, never the celebrated child. Every smile they offered now felt like mockery, every casual touch a reminder that I had been deceived. And yet, amidst the hurt, a strange sense of empowerment emerged. I realized I was no longer a passive participant in their story. I had knowledge, patience, and a plan forming in my mind. For the first time, I saw the dynamics of our family clearly. My parents' obsession with appearances, Chloe's untouchable status, and my own overlooked potential. I understood where they had underestimated me, and I resolved to exploit it. To the outside world, I maintained my usual demeanor, polite, quiet, obedient. I laughed when prompted, nodded at their stories, and played the role of the good child. But behind my calm exterior, a meticulous strategy was forming. I would not only reclaim what was taken from me financially, but I would expose their arrogance, shame their deceit, and force them to face the consequences of underestimating me. Every day I watched, learned, and planned. I documented, photographed, and saved. I even began imagining the scenarios, the look on my parents' faces when confronted, the disbelief as their empire of control crumbled, the inevitable recognition of the power I had quietly amassed. This wasn't just revenge, it was transformation. I was no longer a victim. I was the architect of justice. By the time the week ended, the evidence was complete, the plan detailed, and my resolve unshakable. I had become both patient observer and silent predator, waiting for the perfect moment to act. And though my heart still ached from betrayal, the ache was now tempered with anticipation, with a thrilling certainty. The day they realized the depth of their mistake, and the magnitude of my retaliation was coming. And when it arrived, there would be no excuses, no tears, no negotiation. Only the truth laid bare in a way that would make them regret ever crossing me. The day I had been waiting for arrived quietly, without fanfare. My parents were, as always, completely unaware that the storm I had been preparing was about to hit. I had rehearsed every step, every word, every moment in my mind, until it felt as precise as a scalpel. Revenge, I had learned, was not about shouting or confrontation. It was about control, spectacle, and timing. I chose the family brunch at my parents' favorite restaurant as the stage. The place was packed with familiar faces, relatives, neighbors, and a few of my sister's friends from the wedding. It was perfect, public enough to maximize impact, yet intimate enough that they could feel the full weight of exposure. I arrived with a calm smile, a folder clutched tightly in my hands. Inside were all the proofs, the forged signature, the bank statements, the receipts, the emails. Each document was a testament to their arrogance and carelessness. I waited for the moment when my father began boasting about the perfect wedding we gave Chloe. My mother chimed in, her voice dripping with pride, describing every lavish detail, oblivious that I had every piece of evidence. The warmth of their false confidence fueled my anticipation. I took a deep breath and spoke, carefully, deliberately, so that everyone in the room could hear. Do you realize who actually paid for Chloe's wedding? The laughter died instantly. My father frowned, confused. My mother's smile faltered. I opened the folder, spreading the documents on the table, letting them fall naturally so everyone could see. It wasn't you, it wasn't Chloe. It was me, or rather my signature, forged on your $38.00 wedding bill. A hush fell over the restaurant. I could see my parents' eyes widen, their carefully cultivated composure cracking. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. My father's face went pale, his jaw tightening. They looked around, desperate for allies, but everyone was staring at them in shock, disbelief, and, in some cases, quiet judgment. You what? My father stammered. We thought. I held up a bank statement. This proves it, every transaction, every payment traced back to my account. You didn't just use my name, you used my trust. You assumed no one would notice, and I let you think that for too long. But I've been watching, I've been documenting, and now everyone knows. My mother's hands trembled as she reached for the papers, but I withdrew them, keeping control. Chloe's face turned pale, confusion and shock battling with her natural innocence. Some of the extended family murmured, eyebrows furrowed, whispers spreading like wildfire. The rest of my plan was psychological. I didn't just want to expose the theft, I wanted them to feel it, to confront the reality of their arrogance and entitlement. I calmly recounted the details, the emails where my parents discussed covering costs with my forged signature, the careless boasting to vendors, the quiet assumption that I would never see the truth. With each detail, the color drained from their faces, their pride dissolving into shame. My revenge was not physical. It was not even cruel. It was just justice delivered with precision. I wanted them to see that every lie, every manipulation, every attempt to maintain a perfect family facade had been futile. They had underestimated me, and now the balance of power had shifted irrevocably. By the time I finished, my parents were speechless, their silence louder than any apology could be. Chloe sat frozen, staring at the papers, realization dawning that her dream wedding had been built on deception. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sorrow. Revenge was sweet, but the cost of truth was high. The family dynamic I had known would never return. As we left the restaurant, I knew this chapter was over. The humiliation and exposure had been delivered. My parents' regret was palpable. My sister's understanding had begun to shift. And for the first time in years, I felt an unshakable sense of control and empowerment. I had transformed my betrayal into action, my anger into precision. Revenge, I realized, was not about cruelty. It was about reclaiming what was stolen. Dignity, respect, and the recognition that I would no longer be ignored. And in that quiet, satisfying victory, I finally understood the true weight of betrayal and the intoxicating power of standing up for yourself. The weeks after the brunch unfolded like a quiet reckoning. My parents avoided my gaze, their usual confidence replaced by cautious, almost fearful politeness. Every interaction felt strained, the carefully maintained facade of family perfection now irreparably cracked. My sister Chloe, initially stunned and confused, slowly began to understand the magnitude of what had happened. She had lived in a dream world, but the truth had been pulled from her like a rug from under her feet. For me, the aftermath was a strange mixture of relief and lingering sorrow. Revenge had given me satisfaction, yes, but it had also left an ache, a reminder of how deeply I had been betrayed by the people I had once loved unconditionally. Their greed had not only taken money, but it had also stolen my trust, my innocence, and a sense of safety I had taken for granted. Now, rebuilding that trust within myself was my only priority. I started small. I reclaimed my finances, transferring what remained in accounts my parents had access to new, secure places. I stopped attending the empty family dinners where laughter once masked manipulation. I created distance, both physical and emotional, while still maintaining civility. Each step was deliberate. I wanted to feel empowered, not bitter, and to remind myself that life wasn't about punishment. It was about learning, surviving, and growing stronger. Chloe, surprisingly, became an unexpected ally. She admitted her ignorance of the forgery, but she also acknowledged how their favoritism and deception had shaped her perspective. Slowly, she began supporting me, helping to navigate family gatherings with a level of honesty and awareness that had previously been impossible. In that fragile alliance, I discovered a small measure of healing. We were sisters, yes, but now we were also allies, bound not by parental perfection, but by the shared experience of seeing it collapse. As for my parents, the exposure had humbled them. They no longer held court with the same arrogance, no longer assumed that their children's obedience and loyalty were guarantees. They made tentative attempts to apologize, but the words felt hollow, like rehearsed lines from a script. I accepted their apologies with careful politeness, but withheld trust. Some lessons are learned too late. Some betrayals leave scars too deep to erase entirely. My parents had learned that the way to manipulate me no longer existed. They had underestimated me once, and they would never do so again. With time, I also began to reflect inward. Betrayal is painful, but it also teaches clarity. I recognized the ways I had minimized my own worth to fit into a family hierarchy, the ways I had deferred to others' desires over my own, and the quiet resentment that had grown because of it. By facing the betrayal head-on, I reclaimed not just financial control, but emotional sovereignty. I realized that my revenge had been about more than money. It had been about self-respect, about declaring that I would no longer be sidelined, overlooked, or used. There were moments of quiet triumph, too. Seeing my parents flinch at my confidence, hearing Chloe acknowledge my strength, feeling the weight of injustice lift from my shoulders. All of it reminded me that justice can exist even in families where love is mixed with manipulation. But I also learned the importance of compassion. The world is complicated, people make mistakes, and revenge, while powerful, must be balanced with wisdom. Eventually, life settled into a new rhythm. I no longer chased validation from those who had betrayed me, nor did I seek approval from anyone who had failed to respect me. I cultivated my own life, my own achievements, and my own happiness. Family ties remained complicated, yes, but they were no longer defined by deception and betrayal. They were defined by boundaries, honesty, and a hard-earned awareness. And in that awareness, I found freedom. The pain of betrayal remained, but it no longer controlled me. My parents had learned their lesson, Chloe had learned hers, and I had learned the most important lesson of all. That strength is forged in the fires of injustice, and the sweetest revenge is not just seeing others regret their actions, but reclaiming your own life and dignity in the process. I had turned betrayal into empowerment, deception into clarity, and loss into self-respect. And in that transformation, I found something far more valuable than revenge itself: peace.